Welcome to Sound and Vision, conversations with contemporary artists and musicians about the creative process. Here's the host of Sound and Vision, Brian Alfred.
Sound and Vision is sponsored by Golden Artist Colors. Manufactured in upstate New York, an employee-owned company, Golden makes the best acrylics, oil paints, and watercolors that you can buy. You can find them in your local art store, or you can find them online at goldenpaints.com. There's only about 1 week left for my show that I curated Sound and Color at Miles McHenry Gallery. You can check it out at 511 West 22nd Street, and the show is on view through the 19th of December. The show is an exploration of the ways in which artists grapple with picturing sound and its relationship to images, and how artists can use the element of sound to heighten the dynamics of an image. Some of the artists included in the show are Danny Farrell, Dominique Fung, Carl Funk, Rico Gatson, Jenna Gribben, Justin Liam O'Brien, Danielle Orchard, Richard Phillips, Hiba Shabazz, Guy Yanai, Devin Shimoyama, Eric Denbrigen, and others. You can check out the show at Miles McHenry Gallery, and you can check out the virtual page for the show on the Miles McHenry website. Martine Johanna is an artist who lives and works in Zetten in the Netherlands. She's had exhibitions at Massey Klein Gallery in New York City, Massey Lubin Gallery in New York City, Spoke Art in San Francisco, Brightside in Amsterdam, Hashimoto Gallery in San Francisco, and many more. Her work has been covered in Metal Magazine, Boom, Juxtapose, Contemporary Art Curator Magazine, and Beautiful Bazaar, to just name a few. She also records music under the name Ghost Mother. I caught up with Martine from her place in the Netherlands for a talk about being connected, singing Elvis a cappella, social media, making music, painting as escape, and much more. Here's our conversation. You can't judge a book by its cover.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, some people do have really strong personalities online. You know, like their visual presence is, and now with videos and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you know this person, but you know, it's always different. I love listening to comedians talk because they always say that thing where like, oh, people think we're funny every second of the day, and a lot of them are just totally straightforward in interviews, but then when they go on stage, that's when they light up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes people forget that it's also work, or like a role you play.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, like you're not that all the time.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess I wanted to start off by talking about the music part. I mean, because you sent me, you know, a link to some of your tracks, but how big is music in your life, and is it something that people know that you do, or do you try to keep it separate?
It's actually quite recent. So I began making music, maybe half a year ago, something like that. And music has always been really important, but more listening. And because I love music and film and, you know, anything that creates this world that you can be in or be part of. But I didn't know I could sing. So a friend of mine said, I think you can sing.
You never tried?
No. No, I didn't. So it was really funny. I sang a song in the bathtub in my iPhone, actually. I'm looking if it still works. Yeah, it does. And and it sounded quite nice. So I sent him the song and I sent it to my husband. And my husband actually started to cry, which was really sweet. Nice. Funny. Yeah, he's like, you can sing. We've been together for like
funny.
13 years.
yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, you can do that.
Yeah, and he's a musician as well. Like, he's an artist and a musician. So it kind of opened up this whole new world also for me. So I just started experimenting, also working together with other starting musicians. I still do that. And it's just, I really like it. I really like it. I think it's so different from painting and
really
drawing and writing. Yeah, so it's another expression, you know? I like all these different expressions a lot, so...
Definitely. So as someone who's been a big music fan, I assume since you were very young...
Yeah.
And then you find out in the tub, oh, I can sing, you know, like, do you, like, how do you come to, because a lot of times when people, you know, they get inspired to play or write music through early on, like getting really into music, and it kind of just starts with like, oh, I want to pick up a guitar too, or I want to play the drums, you know, and so your tastes kind of get molded by your growth of listening through different genres and stuff, but coming to it a little later on, when you thought, oh, I can sing, now how did you think to shape that into songs? Like, there must have been a lot more for you to kind of pull from as far as your influences.
Yeah, I think it started a little bit with, I've been drawing a book. It's behind me. It's all drawings.
Oh, that's
it's called Ghost Mothers, and my artist name is Ghost Mother, from the singing. But I think it's that storytelling and the writing. I was doing a lot of writing, and I thought like some of these texts could be really nice to sing. And I like this sort of moody atmosphere and very intimate atmosphere as well that really draws you in. And I don't know, I just... that's the way I like to make music. I actually also, which annoys the hell out of my friends, like I don't keep a rhythm. Like, I have a hard time also keeping notes or like quarter rhythms or like all these rules. I don't like rules, like permanently, like I don't like rules at all.
No rules for me.
No rules, no. Just I want to do it by intuition. But somehow it works, so for me it works. And I really like that. But I have a small anecdote.
Yes.
Why I haven't been singing for such a long time is because when I was 15, I was in a sort of a disco party, like high school party.
Yeah.
And I had to come on stage, and somebody gave me a microphone and said, you have to sing this Elvis song.
Wait,
Love
Elvis?
Yeah, Elvis.
The disco remix of that version?
No, actually, there was no music with it. I had to sing Elvis, like Love Me Tender. And I've never heard... Yeah. I never heard that song before, like at a party. So I was singing that song, and I sounded like a sheep. So like or a goat or something related to that. And since then, I was so embarrassed. They were measuring like the clapping afterwards because it was some kind of contest that I was suddenly in. I wasn't aware of it. And then there was only one little boy applauding, and he was from my school, and he was in love with me. So he was like, "Yay!" clapping. And but I was so embarrassed by that, and it was videotaped. And my parents laughed so hard when they saw the videotape, and I decided never to sing again.
Oh my gosh!
Until half a year ago. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the bathtub's the best place to give it a go, right? There's no
there's no one there.
Yeah, and it's good acoustics. It can give you that kind of confidence.
Yeah, and I think also, at that age you're very brittle, and I thought like, no, that's not for me. So
now the music that you've been doing, those tracks that you're recording, are you doing or thinking about playing out at all, or is it pretty much just bedroom recording stuff?
No, I'm sitting sort of in my studio. I have a studio set up here as well. So I could have chosen to speak into a microphone, but it's I haven't. But it's I actually really want to make maybe an album or something, but I'm still working on it. Also, I've made an audiobook, or I'm making an audiobook of the book behind me, the drawn book. And the audio is different than... So the drawings in the book are different, but in the same world as the text. Mm-hmm. So it's a different version, the text version and the drawing version. And the version that is audio is also different again. So it's like 3 different perspectives from 3 different influences. And they all come together in one sort of realm or world. And so also doing the audio book, which is nice with like sound effects and trying.
Yeah, will there be any singing in the audiobook or music? Or is it just purely narration?
Purely, the story, and I tell it like really like I'm there in the story, which is it's awesome to do.
Yeah, it sounds great. Maybe the 4th iteration could be the sort of the album, which is the book, which is the images played to music and song.
Yeah, actually,
and you could go full circle.
Yeah, there are 2 songs, Walls and what was the other one? I have to Paths. Right. They could be from the book. Like it has a little bit of that narrative and the atmosphere. Now, I think you'll recognize it as an artist that once you're making something, doing something, is it sort of immerses your whole world. Like everything you are doing is related to the stuff that you're making. So I think it's influenced anyway. Yeah. Yeah,
it's funny how when you're working on something like that, all the tangential stuff in your life starts to connect to it in some way or another, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, or it explains the work afterwards, what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
definitely.
oh my God, I was busy with something like that and influences, and now I see it back in my work. But sometimes when you are working or making something, you are not aware of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have that realization. I mean, ideally, that's what the value of art, right? You're building these worlds, and then they say something. They make you have a deeper understanding of the world that you're inhabiting, in one way or another.
Yeah, it's really reflective.
Ideally.
And it's, it shows the world to a looking glass that's not so direct and registering like, the internet or, I don't know. It's, it's sort of also without judgment, which I like a lot. When you make art, it's not definitely that judgmental. Maybe not for everybody, but it's sort of an open view, which is really hard nowadays to have an open view.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's a view on everything at all times.
Yeah, and everybody's right.
When did you get the idea for the book? Right, yeah, totally.
The idea for the book, so it's called Ghost Mothers. I started drawing these A3 drawings, like really harshly with a pencil, of this woman that sort of represents me, but also women from my past. Because I was doing, at a similar time, I was doing a genealogy of my family and only the feminine side. So I was looking into all the females in my past, so from my mother's side and from my father's side. I went back until about 1565 or something.
Wow.
And all those women had really harsh lives, like they lost a lot of children, like the further you go back, lost a lot of children, they died young, and it was a real big difference with the men. And the thing that stood out for me also was that most of the times in the archives, the women's names were spelled differently every time. So the men's names were always correct. But the women's names, every time a child died, or, it's registered. But with the women, it didn't matter that it was spelled differently every time.
That's
and
odd.
I found that, and it's sort of that role in history of women that they didn't really matter, and still they matter less than men. I know I'm saying something big, but it's true. And it's, it's not a given as a woman to have the same success or the options in life.
Yeah,
always. So
definitely.
And I don't know, it sort of underlines that feeling for me. I myself had a bit of a difficult childhood. I grew up in a really religious village, and my parents were quite modern. So I had a lot of stuff happen to me from that perspective when I grew up. I also write about it in the book. So the book is part memories, it's part fiction, and it's part sort of a dream world, because I dream a lot, very vividly. And I really noticed when I was becoming from a child, I was becoming like a teenager and a woman. All of a sudden, there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't allowed to do anymore. And but my brothers, they were fine. And I just couldn't grasp the concept why that was. That as a woman you are often more in danger. You have to take better care of what people say about you, your reputation, and blah, 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 blah. So that was really frustrating for me. And I think that stayed with me for the rest of, until now in my life. So the book it doesn't really reflect on it. It just describes, and it gives the feeling of how I felt back then, but also how I feel like I and so many women are part of that bigger story, that all of us have to deal with this thing.
Right.
That is completely different than when you're a man. And I think differences are fine. But I don't know. I play with it also in my work, with colors, and that are often seen as very feminine, and I don't mind that. Like, I don't need to be a man or to make tough work. I just make what I make, and it should be valued just as much
I feel like
as any other work.
That sort of quote unquote tough iconography, or like the gender roles of color and stuff, that's just all tradition stuff that's become kind of like this latent, just like you were saying, this whole hierarchy of gender, and how women have often been cast as aside, even though ironically women are the ones who are generating life and giving birth and caring for, what I mean, they're just kind of like off to the side. And something like a tradition like that, of like where women always, not always, but most of the time, just take the man's family name, so their name is erased. It's just this tradition thing that is so, blatantly sexist in a way. It's like the man, you just take the man's name. You're now a part of that name, And I've always thought it's great that like a lot of artists, women artists, will not take the name. You know what I mean? They keep creative people, like actresses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't either. I will keep my own name. The thing is, it's still the name of my father, though. But so
but there's slight empowerment in it. It's not a total.
But that's the thing is, like, I don't even mind. Like, I think people should have the freedom to do whatever they want. In a sense, as long as it's not cutting off somebody else's freedom.
Right.
I think everything should be possible. So I'm not a black and white thinker. I'm really grey thinker. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that once you start putting value to some things, like a value, of course, there will be values always, but that feminine is sort of too feminine. In the art world here in Netherlands, it's also quite traditional. And here it's still like the bad boy perspective. When you're a bad boy, it already says in the name, only for boys, then you're like successful artist. And it's strange because oftentimes also the more expressive you are, like if we took gender out of the equation and you just have that people are either introverted or extroverted, often the extroverted people are the ones that are more successful because they're better at networking or being seen. Right. But then the sort of introverted individual maybe makes much better art. You know.
Totally.
But it's like, yo, hey, I'm here. I'm not like that, by the way. I'm quite introverted. But and I also stay away from competitions, from prizes. I've been asked for television programs and stuff, but I just don't want to do that. I just want to make what I make, and I don't want it to be like a competition for attention or as long as I'm happy with what I do.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I often tell students that, those who show a sort of hesitancy to want to partake in the whole, like, getting themselves out there and networking and, being an extrovert, which is part of that process, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell them that part of it is, too, that if no one sees your work, like if you're an amazing artist and you're just in your cave, studio, and you never come out and you don't talk to anyone or show anyone, then of course no one's going to see the work or champion it, because you kind of have to be on people's radar at the same time. And a lot of times people will say that's nepotism or, oh, you just know the right people. But if the quote unquote right person is curating something or putting something together, but they've never seen your work or don't know you, how are they going to know to put you in that thing? So part of it is a necessary evil, I think, to just at least be visible. But nowadays one would think that the advantage of technology, there's several disadvantages, but the advantage is that you can be visible without having to be running around and going to cocktail parties or schmoozing or whatever,
Absolutely. And I think I've been very lucky that I just started out 10 years ago when there was, these social media outlets were coming to life. And so I kind of grew with it. So, I have an Instagram and it's being followed. And that's how also galleries found me. And I think that's, it's harder now, I think, when you're an artist or emerging artist now, or you're starting out just now. It's much harder to get into that type of game because, you've seen The Social Dilemma probably. Yes, who hasn't, right? So,
right.
And it's, it's much harder now to be noticed. And it's also again a popularity contest, so that's harder. I think I have a lot of people that followed me since the beginning, and I'm really grateful for that. I also have contact with like collectors, and they really stick around, and the gallery people as well. I love them so much. I really like to work with nice people.
Yeah.
And you need to do it, but I'm not. I don't know if do you know that I have ADD, like attention deficit disorder? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I talk about it sometimes. I'm a disaster at gallery openings. When people ask me like, "Who's your favorite artist?" or I just
that question.
I draw a blank. I'm like,
me.
Oh,
just
yes,
to say me.
This guy is my favorite artist. This is my favorite movie. What's it called again? My favorite actor, screenwriter, writer, whatever. So everything, I draw a blank at the spot.
Yeah.
Because then I get too nervous. And So, and my husband always remembers all the names. I always remember all the content, but yeah, who cares if you don't know the name, right? So, I don't know.
It's such a funny question to ask someone at their opening. Like, who's your favorite artist?
Yeah, well, it happens.
Could you imagine going to see a band play, and then after you get backstage and you're able to talk to the the singer and be like, so who's your favorite band? It seems like an odd question at the time.
It is, yeah. It is, actually, yeah.
Well, openings, I think, are a tricky thing anyways, But it's interesting, when you were talking about the social media thing, the one thing that I've been thinking about recently is kind of how it changes, because like you were saying, a lot of dealers and collectors and people are active online.
Yeah.
So whereas maybe the collectors used to just go to specific galleries and say, okay, who's the artists who are interesting or relevant?
I think it's about 50-50. Yeah, I think it is 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, they often discover you through the gallery still. And or an article or something like that. And then they find you on the internet. I mean, that's really easy.
But before that, it was really kind of who knows who. Like, in my personal experience before the internet, a lot of galleries would take on an artist because someone else that they showed would say, oh, you got to check out this artist. They're really great. You should go check out their studio. And then they would go, and it was kind of this word of mouth thing. Whereas now, it could just be like, oh, wow, look at all the followers this artist has. Like, they have, hundreds of thousands of people looking at their work, which is probably good to sell work. But the metric has changed in a way because, like you said, it kind of creates this popularity contest, which could just be based on, something that may not be that work is the most relevant or the most engaging conceptually, or you know what I mean? It's just a lot of people like the look of that work.
Yeah, and it's also a trap door because it's a lot of the followers are not followers, they are bots. Right. So when you don't engage enough on Instagram, when you don't do 3 posts a day, and people don't engage in it enough, it's really 3 posts a day. I don't even want to do that.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I think 3 a month is a lot.
So people want 3 a day? Jesus.
Yeah, they try to force you to do that, but so it's also fake.
Right.
You should never look at the follower numbers. You just should look at the work and see if you like it.
Exactly.
And that's why you follow it, not because of the numbers, because it's a scam. I'm very aware of it, so I don't really try to look at the numbers because it drives you crazy. My numbers have been dropping since my last solo because I haven't been engaging, because I'm not really making something, some like loose works, but I don't want to be online all the time. So I see like 100 people disappearing a week. But they are not people, they are the bots. Right. And if they are the people, that's fine too. I'm okay with that, I know people that really like the work will follow you anyway. And it's fine. I just don't want to worry too much about it.
I don't think you can. I'm not to be annoying with the music references, but I'd rather play a smaller club, like the Bowery Ballroom or something, than like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, because there's real engagement.
You feel like, oh, these people are really here to see me, not just like, oh, I'm, my band is the it band. Like you just have to go see them or whatever. Like I would feel better, I think, about playing those smaller venues.
Yeah, and I think that's the music reference. Yeah, it's funny. I'm not gonna ever be Ariana Grande or something. I don't even know if I pronounce it right.
Sure, it's fine.
It's fine.
You meant Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah, probably. I don't listen to either of them, which is, bless them. But I think it's fine too but it's all. I think the whole popularity thing is really messing with people's minds, and I think like watching The Social Dilemma, for instance. It underlines everything you already know. And I don't know what the cure is. But yeah, don't mind it too much. For like students that are starting out, just try to be authentic and not by doing drugs or being the bad boy.
Right.
Just making cool work and try to find your own handwriting. It's not always, copying other people's work, or you see that a lot. You just have to find your own sort of way of translating what you feel or see. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, but don't you feel like that's harder for young people these days? It's weird because I grew up without the internet and social media and all that stuff, so I feel like my core sensibility is more like it's better if you're making something that not everyone is into, because then you're probably doing something that's pushing the envelope. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just that kind of avant-garde sensibility of like, the jazz that was amazing was the jazz that pissed off the crowd. Not like the singer-songwriter who was just pleasing everyone.
In the character of the artist, just generalizing like completely now, but you have this thing where the artist always feels different. And the artist always feels like they see things differently. They are different than everybody else. That, of course, has to do with that your reflection on the world is not about generalizing or...
the status quo.
It's not about status quo. It's about seeing things differently. I think nowadays a lot of young people are like, I want to be an artist. I want to make the prettiest thing. And they stop thinking at that point. They just want to make the prettiest, or they want to copy the thing that's most successful, or want to copy the thing that's most abstract. And they don't think about how they feel about the world. So I also was a teacher for 10 years. And my husband still does that. And I always liked to do the research exercises where they had to research their own fascinations and their own obsessions, even if they were creepy or strange or something about how they look at the world.
Right.
And oftentimes, even if it's third or fourth year students, they have never done that in the academy nowadays. And I'm like,
it's not championed anymore though.
No, but that is the most fascinating thing about the artist, that the artist has its own scope and makes you look at things differently instead of trying to create these narrow pathways where everybody's like, yes, I choose this path of taste, this path of opinion, and everybody else wrong.
Right.
It doesn't work like that, because then you fall apart as a community. And I think art is something that binds people together from different political views, different opinions. And,
I totally agree with you. One of the ironies of that is that if you think about back in, like, say, the 50s and 60s, when there was like art movements, say it's like color field painting or abstract expressionism, people reflect on those times and be like, oh, it was such a narrow path of like what you could do as an artist that was considered relevant, Yeah. But looking back on it, it seems like, those were people who were just trying to push things into a different direction. Whereas nowadays you can kind of make any artwork you want. It could be figurative, it could be abstract, it could be installation, it could be, But I feel like creativity is really linked to popular culture much more these days. And it's just this drive to be as popular as you can be, or like to get the mainstream thing is the big goal, or to get the popularity. And I don't think it's a coincidence that everyone is trying to constantly share their life and show themselves like, look what I ate and look what I did today and look at my curated life, But it's weird. It's almost like it flipped. It opened up in a way, but in a way that kind of narrowed it even more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also the thing like with the concept of pretty and beautiful, which is a natural thing that we've all had since, we stood up right. It's like you choose the prettiest person because they are most, how do you say that?
Symmetrical.
Their face is most symmetrical. That's how it starts. It's like in our gene pool.
Right.
And that is the danger, because then you get this sort of almost, it's a little bit wrong to say, maybe like Übermensch idea. Mm-hmm. Like that it should be the shiniest object in the room.
Right.
But the shiniest object in the room never creates discussion. And discussion is also something that's not possible anymore, somehow.
Right.
We're really in a big mess, I think. We're also not. I mean, we're doing really well as mankind, but we're also doing really badly, really poorly. I remember the times, my mom and dad were from a different political party, and they would have discussions at the table, but they still loved each other.
Right.
It was possible to have different opinions about things and also have discussions and, find some sort of middle ground. And it seems like now every word is weighed and, everybody tries to be woke or whatever. I think woke is the other name for the shiniest object in the room.
Right.
And, there's no discussion possible because everything...
The individualism is kind of robbed a little, right?
Yeah. So things like punk movement or, things that are sort of anti-society in an idealistic way are now not cool anymore, I can tell you that. Right. I don't think it's just moronic. Yeah. I'm sorry. But when you see protesters, protesting, the one group is protesting the other on the streets during Corona times. And I'm thinking like, half of you is going to die. For what ideals? Right. Because you're in this rabbit hole and the other group is in the other rabbit hole. And you're never going to find each other,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's you can't win. And,
it's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one would hope that art is a place where some of the gray matter can live, and it's not black and white, and there's
and
sort of like things aren't defined. Like you have to explore into it. I mean,
and it gives you
sound
room
too
to
romantic about it.
Oh, but it is. You can't escape it. Art is romantic. Even shit art is romantic. Sorry, but it's
I think
thing
there's
is
our quote.
Even shit art is romantic.
It's pretty
but
good.
The thing is, it is room to breathe. Art is room to breathe. Everybody calms down, have a discussion, have a cup of coffee, and go your own separate ways again.
Yeah.
A room for experiment, room for discussion, room for other opinions, give each other breathing space. Yeah.
And escape too, right? Because didn't you sort of turn to art to escape, like, a lot of people do in their childhood. It's like an escape. It's like an imaginary place to go away from the day-to-day stuff that you want to try to get away from, right?
Yeah, I do that as well. When I paint with the bright colors, and it's all childhood memories that I paint with, color-wise, and it's the one thing that completely makes me calm to do that. So, and create these worlds that can be interpreted, also. Yeah.
Well, clearly you're very talented at representation and painting. You seem to be very facile at drawing and painting. Was that something that always was there? Were you just good at it as a kid, or is it something you just worked really hard on? Did art come naturally?
I think it was my only means of expression, because I had a really hard time communicating what I felt. And I'm also high sensitive, and it's just also so fashionable nowadays, but things are what they are. So I'm really sensitive, and with the ADD, lack of attention, I had a really difficult time at school, but it's not that I'm not smart. I have a high IQ, but sometimes you have to find your own way. And I'm from a different era than now, of course. And for me, drawing back then and painting was my way of calming myself down, of making my own stories and my own world where I felt safe.
Yeah.
But when you're in a religious community and things are really, about not standing out of the crowd, then that's the safest place to be, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did you have to hide it?
No, not necessarily. I would just hide myself in my room
Right.
and try to avoid some, not always. If I was outside and I would get into conflict, I was a bit of I would fight a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Were
boys.
your brothers older?
I have a twin brother, and he's completely different than I am. Like he's the opposite. He's very. I'm very emotional, and he's very not emotional. And my older brother was always like fidgeting, and like he had his room in the attic, and he's really good with technology. We're all a little bit autistic and strange. It's a family thing, like it runs in the family. We're all sort of creative and in some ways socially difficult people. We're nice people, but we're not the easiest. And so... And my brothers, I remember, I always had to help in the household. They never had to.
Yeah.
And, so that was another thing that frustrated me.
Right.
And I would ask why a lot, but that doesn't help.
Parents didn't want to hear that.
No, it's just the way it is, the way things are. And artists don't like that. Artists don't like, it's the way things are. No.
Again, no rules. We don't want rules. That's the beauty of being an artist. For all the things that suck about being an artist, at least you get the whole no rules bit. Yeah,
and it's not about, some rules are necessary, to keep people from killing each other. But besides that, I'm like, and traffic and stuff, right. Things that are necessary just for, Yeah,
but I imagine that it must feel good for you now in light of what art was to you growing up as this escape in a place where you could exhale, that now you're able to sort of do it and also engage in the world, like share these images and ideas with the world in a way that's not like you're saying, like you don't have to be out at an opening every night, walking your art around or whatever, but people can find your work and sort of have this dialogue, but you're able to spend your time like being creative in your studio and just doing what you're driven to do.
Absolutely.
It's almost like heaven in a way, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is really nice, although I really miss teaching. I don't know, I liked the balance a lot, because when you do the art thing, it is wonderful, and I have all the sort of time in the world to do it.
Yeah.
But it's also always about you.
Right.
Because yes, it's about the world, but it's always about you because it's your view. And what I liked about teaching so much is that it wasn't about me. It was about the student that was in front of me and how to help them develop further and get their own insights, and having some sort of a social role that is about giving more. It's quite an egoistical thing to be an artist.
Totally.
And it's all nice and all, and but I don't know. Sometimes it also can feel if you don't have something like that, it feels really sort of like I'm in this big ego pool, swimming around in my own, like, oh, I'm so amazing.
Right.
I don't think I'm that amazing. Me. Yeah, it's my view, it's my story, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I think it's healthy to have sort of a balance there. But of course now for a lot of people it's like COVID times and the grass is greener thing where you think like, oh, if I could be an artist 24 hours a day all the time, it would be wonderful. It's not true. You need something in sort of a social perspective to stay healthy and give something back.
I completely agree. Because I think, to be honest, because being an artist who's self-sustaining and you can just do that as your job and do it, I think that's such a diamond to find, you know what I mean? That given the opportunity, most artists would take that and say, oh, well, this is a blessing and a gift to be able to like do this work, and they do it, you know? Yeah. But I think that deep down, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's that balance that's so important, because in my life, I was lucky enough to start showing out of school, and I could just quit my job, and I was painting basically every day for years and years and years. And it was the me show. And I'm not like a hyper egotistical person, but I mean, I was just making my work all the time. So I was thinking, oh, I want to make something really good, and I hope people like this, and I hope this is engaging, and it's adding something to the discord of art. You know, it just becomes this voice about you and what you're looking at. And then I had a kid, and then that all left. It was like a black hole that just sucked all that out of the room. And then it was like, all of a sudden, it was like all about him, you know? Yeah. And the center of the universe wasn't me anymore. And at the beginning, it was tough because it's like, oh, I don't have time to work, and you fight it, and you're like, oh, I'm losing all this time. And then as it moves on, and, you know, and a little while later, I started teaching and started coaching kids playing soccer. And, you know, it's just, looking back now, the things that I've done in my art life that aren't about me or my work are the most fulfilling and sort of like soul fulfilling, you know, like teaching. And if I have a student who goes on and does well, I mean, that feels so good. Or who, you know, I feel like I impact them positively. Or if I'm coaching a little kid in soccer and I help him out, like that to me is what it's all about now.
And also, don't forget, it's the same thing, that it's all also in our gene pool, that we are social creatures. And a lot of people that have jobs that put them like away from people, even like the DJs, for instance, you know, the big DJs that, for instance, commit suicide because of loneliness. It's, you know, you need to have some kind of human interaction that gives you purpose. Yeah, I think it's just it's not about being this glorious. You know, also if you read about big artists that were alone a lot and were put on a pedestal and were doing nothing else but their art and being, you know, appraised for it constantly, they were not the nicest people or the happiest. Yes. You know, we are all people. I mean, we're all normal in a sense. And I think nobody should be put that high on a pedestal because it's not healthy. I mean, it's nice to look up to people or have, like, you know, examples that you want to live up to. But, you know, glory is, I don't know. That whole thing about, you know, the age of 27, remember that? With that people of 27, rock and roll lifestyle, that you die at 27. Yeah. I'm like, dude, it's not nice. You know, it shouldn't be something to live up to, to glorify. It's a strange dynamic, and I don't know. It's interesting. Humankind is interesting.
I think it really is, though, built on that ego of like me and like that adulation or needing that kind of, you know, I guess we're all looking for some sort of like fulfillment in one way or another. So
of course,
you could find that fulfillment by having a gallery show where you sell all the work and you get all the reviews and everyone's like, you're amazing. Or you could get that, you know, same fulfillment by going out and doing like a mural in a community that needs, you know, and working with kids from like low income or like disadvantaged kids and like doing something creative like that, and that really feeds your spirit or something. They're just different ways of getting, because that still makes you feel good. You just feel good because you're making other people feel good, as opposed to just selling work and making yourself feel good. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you really want to, well, I think a lot of people strive to feel that way, you know, to feel like they're making some sort of impact, a positive impact in one way or another, whether it's for themselves or for others.
Yeah, and I know artists that also still work, in a cafe, serving coffee, because they just like to have human interaction. Totally. And even though their work is successful, I think, so, sometimes I'm asked to do like tutorials, or I get emails from young people that want instructions, or I tend to not do that, which is a sort of opposite of what I'm saying. But I think I liked teaching a lot because what I said, it wasn't about me all the time, and then it still is about me, you know.
Right.
I don't want. I don't know. It's a complicated thing, the ego thing.
But that's kind of like, if you responded to every person who wanted a little tip on painting, that's not sustainable. You wouldn't have enough time.
No.
But you might be able to find a way to do something online, or some sort of video or something, to where you can give people, but just not every single person. You know what I mean? Or you can teach to some extent, or engage in a way that works for you, that won't rob you of every minute of your day. And
I think also there it depends on what type you are. I know a lot of people that do these tutorial videos, but when I'm painting, it's a very intimate process. I never paint with somebody around. Yeah. I also don't like filming it. It's like my own private moment where I try to keep it in my own bubble, and maybe that's a thing that I don't like, because it's sort of my private process or something. Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe it could be the Martine Zoom coach series, where you just zoom in with people and tell them where to put. You need a little more red. In that area.
I'm not that technical either. I developed my own way of painting. So, yeah.
Oh, you could be a motivational coach. Go, you can do it.
You can do it. Find your inner strength.
Isn't that the best teacher, though? I feel like...
Your inner rebel. I like these conversations as well, like the compliments also. Like, I think it's more about the content than about the technique. I think the technique you can develop your own. Right. But as long as you are aware of the world around you and do something with it and the way you look at it, I think that's something, the concept phase, it's most interesting.
Definitely.
Often.
Yeah, I feel like my job as a teacher is, when I leave the studio of whoever it is, I want them to work. Like I want them to want to keep making more work, not like, destroying spirits, or just telling them, this painting, the palette's too cool, you need to add some warmth to it, or whatever it is, like the technical
or too
stuff.
girly, or
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank God I've never said that to anyone in my entire life. Your work is too girly.
It happens.
There's a lot of bad teachers out there, right?
Well, it has been quite a topic here in the Netherlands the last couple of weeks. Really? Yeah, because there are a lot of institutes that sort of have supported sort of the bad boy attitude, and where it wasn't safe for female artists or students to be around, but then the bad boy artists are protected and not the females. It has been a big thing here. It's still happening, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was a Dutch phenomenon, of the bad boy.
Well, I don't know if it's
encouraging
Dutch.
the rebels.
I think it's when there are sometimes teachers that sort of want to go back in time and see a guy or a student that has that sort of bad boy principle, and they sort of want to be in that stream.
Yeah.
And they get involved in it. And then it doesn't matter what somebody like that does. They get protected.
Right. It's like a nostalgia for reckless abandon that's in our society these days. It's not really like punk isn't really around anymore, like punk.
No.
So if you see someone like someone with that sensibility, that they're going to be like, oh, this is a throwback to when I was a kid or so,
Yeah, and it's just so obvious. Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know. And I don't want to be too negative. It's just a recent thing here. But I think it's also something that needs to develop, Also, with the types like introvert, extrovert, being seen, how do you handle stuff like that? It's something that needs to develop, and it's, a lot of things are changing. But I don't know if the sort of the protest movement where everybody is preaching for their own church, if that helps.
No, I think we need a little more coming together in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, people have agendas and they have, strong beliefs on what they think is the right thing. But at the same time, it's like listening to other people is important too, I think.
Yeah, it's very important because you have to know the source of where the frustration comes from.
Right.
And I think that's the most important, not the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't talk to each other, then you never get to that point.
Yeah, completely. A quick question in regards to the whole teaching thing. Were you teaching, because didn't you move outside of the city? Don't you live?
Yeah, now for almost 3 years, I live outside. I left all my friends behind. I was sort of the connecting factor in a way between my friends. And they always would come around my place and hang out. And so I left them. And now I'm like, I miss them so much. I get visitors. We get visitors. Because we have a nice place and it's in nature and stuff. But it is. I don't miss the city, but I miss the energy of the city.
Yeah.
I miss the idea of then when you're in a tram in Amsterdam and you look around and you know that there's stuff going on all around you. It's sort of exciting. Even if you don't participate, you are still part of it, when you live there.
Yeah.
And here it's like when somebody bikes by, I'm like, a person. Which is humans. So it's sometimes it's really boring. Like sometimes I really miss my friends and I like discussions and openness and like having fun together and talk about all these subjects. And all my friends are really interested in the world and how things work. And you get this crazy discussion. Sometimes I was just a fly on the wall, and I miss that. And now it's even more with COVID. I think a lot of people experience this thing where they suddenly realize how important people are in your life for
Isn't
reflection.
That funny? Like, at least here, people had this immediate reaction of wanting to get away, especially from cities, so you could get out in nature and have some space because there's no space in the city. And then, like after a few months, people started like pining to be back, even if they weren't going out, to be back in the city, just so they can feel that, like what you were talking about, that energy. It's like you don't have to stick your finger in a socket, but if you're standing next to someone who does, you're going to get a jolt from that. Like you're going to get a little adrenaline.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's also the energy is most of the time it's optimistic. Like even if there's bad stuff happening in the city, you still have that feeling of we're all in it together.
Right.
And I think that is also a thing that you don't have on the internet.
Right.
So
no, not at all.
No, and the real world is so much more, you say hi to strangers if it's possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, I'm better not saying hi to that person. But, it's, I don't know, it's the vibe. You just know that people are busy with their work or with making something new, or having, a new store or I don't know, working in the garden or something. There's always something going on. People are thinking, you can feel the energy, and it's just relatable, of course, because we are all human. Sometimes I look outside and all I see is a tree, and I'm supposed to relate to the tree. And like, the tree is not talking back to me. So it's nice. I love nature, but sometimes it sort of freaks me out a bit to not have that contact. Even if I'm not talking to people, it's just a vibe. And I love people. I love assholes. Sorry, like not literally, but people that act like assholes.
Right.
Please don't quote me. And I just really love how crazy people are, or how silent, or I think it's amazing to have all these different people. I can really appreciate people, especially now here in the country.
Well, have you been, since COVID has kicked in, have you been doing more sort of online meeting with friends and stuff? Have you been using that more?
Actually, no, twice.
Oh, really?
Twice only. Yeah.
So you really are disconnected.
A little bit. No, I've actually had visitors, because we have quite a big house. So sometimes friends come over and they sleep over. I'll just clean the whole house, make sure they have a separate bathroom, and we can hang out in a distance, That's really nice. I really like that. And they also experience it as an escape. But now it's become so dangerous that has come to a little bit to a halt. Yeah. You don't want to prolong this situation too much. I'm really safe, in that sense. I was already a little bit of a clean freak before COVID. Like, if I would come out of a train, I would always wash my hands. My husband, even now, I have to remind him, wash your hands.
Right.
You're freaking me out. I think a lot of people have that. Like, my friends are also like really conscious people that are really sort of, world improving types. So they also stay away a little bit because of that. Yeah.
Right. Well, hopefully, hopefully we're on the tail end of all this.
It could be worse. It could be in a war.
Or the disease could be worse, to be honest. It could just drop everyone. So at least we're, vaccines are coming and stuff. So hopefully things will be able to like go out and do, normal things eventually.
Yeah, can I ask you something?
Because
I was talking to Louis about it. Like, we both had the same realization at the same time. Like, is art going to be relevant in a couple of years from now? Handmade art. What do you think?
Of course. What what gave you the sudden inclination that it might not be?
I think because of all the digital age. Yeah. The digital age and the sort of disconnect that people have.
I think that'll make it even more valuable. It may not be as accessible necessarily, or it may change its kind of intensity in daily life, but I think it'll become because let's face it, like, of most of the things that we make in life, art isn't necessary. It's never been really needed for our existence. I mean, it is in a way for our soul and for our minds and for culture, but it's not like water or food. So it's always been relevant, even in like massive wars or epidemics. It survived like plagues and all sorts of stuff. So and I think it will maintain. And that's coming from someone like, I do digital media, like I make animations and video stuff, and I make paintings, and I don't think the handmade thing will ever lose its its value to humans.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes. But it depends on where the world is going to, I guess.
Yeah. Again, I often in my life draw parallels between music and art. And like, can you imagine a world where like music isn't really necessary? is it?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to have it to live. But can you imagine a world without music?
Well,
No way.
I think also that necessary thing is maybe because we've had art since we could walk up straight.
Exactly.
And singing and dancing and like all these expressions. And I think there is a need for it because it's sort of inherently part of us, of all of us. Like even the housewife that paints a rose, or somebody that takes a photograph, or it just it's part of our expression.
It's what makes us human in a way, because like every kid picks up a crayon and draws at some point. If not, there's something totally wrong with that household. But you know what I mean? It's just the inclination. It's like we make things. We make pictures.
I know some elephants that make art. There are like experiments. Computerized art. I find that really interesting also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but elephants, we kind of give them a brush. I mean, they wouldn't be out there painting on canvas by themselves.
No,
but they are creative.
They wouldn't go to the art store.
To
buy
Dick
some
Blick
paints
and like grab a canvas on the way to the circus.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes us us. So I don't think we'll ever lose that.
No, me neither.
We better not. This place is not going to be. I mean, even if you think it's amazing too. Even if you think about all the technological developments with computer and all that, right parallel along with it is sort of artistic endeavors, whether it's video games or virtual reality environments.
Digital art, like 3D. You see that a lot now developing.
Yeah. Creativity is part of our evolution. It's whether it's a painting or a sculpture or interpretive dance or playing a horn, whatever it is, it's just something that we as a species just do,
Yeah.
Its value may ebb and flow, or its worth or its, sort of cognitive significance might be questioned or leveled, but I think it's just something that is, wired into our DNA. And if you think about like a parallel, these vaccines that they're making for this disease, the way, if you've studied or looked into the way that they're addressing, thinking about the way the body can understand the virus and be warned about it, it's so creative in the way that they're coming up with these ideas to synthesize a faux virus that looks and acts just like COVID, but the body can sort of sense that. Those things are really creative in nature, and that
Absolutely.
will actually those things potentially save our species in a way. And basically what I'm saying is for how destructive we are as a species, destroying this earth, we're pretty creative at the same time.
Absolutely. We do it creatively.
Right. We're creative in our destruction.
Absolutely. No, but sometimes you have to wonder also, when you look at really big societies that came down and self-destructed, it was always at the height of their function. So that's an interesting thing.
Definitely. It's like your highest point before you fall,
Yeah, because then that brings you also to the lowest.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well,
what do you have? What are you working on now, other than a book? And what's the timeline for the book? Do you have like a due date in your mind?
Yeah, it should have been done last year.
Oh yeah.
But then COVID came.
Right.
No, actually, I have to reprint a couple of pages. I have to finish the audio book, edit it. And as soon as the COVID thing is over, I want to do an exhibition also of the drawings, together with the release of the book. And it's going to be a very limited edition. And the even more limited edition will get the audio on tape. I'm going to make a cassette just to travel back in time. Right. And so I'll have a download code as well, just to be modern as well. But no, it's, I don't know, a couple of months maybe. I have time.
Are you paying? Yeah, we all we all have a little bit of time now.
Yeah.
Are you painting parallel to working on that, or are you just kind of focusing on that right now?
No, I'm painting also behind me. You see a painting. I'm just a couple of loose works. And I'll have an exhibition again in the spring at Hashimoto Contemporary from Ken Harmon.
San Francisco?
In San Francisco. And looking forward to that. But I really like to do solo shows because I can create my own little world again, like several paintings under one umbrella. And I don't do a lot of group shows because to me it's too loose, like singular artworks. I don't like to do that. I like to create stories. Yeah.
And then what about music? Are you continually do you do that all the time, or does it come in batches? Do you have the way we can release things nowadays is so fluid on the internet. Remember when we were younger and people released records? They had
I remember
10 songs, and it was a front to back.
So Louis has a little publishing company where I'm also gonna publish the book under, and he also releases music sometimes as projects. And I just make music whenever I feel like it, and most of it I don't put online. It's just also sort of research for me, what I like or what I like to make. That's just gonna go on. And sometimes I paint in a day and I do drawings, or I work on the book, or I write something down, or I'll make music. So it's very all over the place. I'm quite easily distracted. Unless I have a deadline for painting, then I'll work. Like if I have a solo show, I will work days and weeks on end until it's finished under pressure, which I like a lot. Because then I have the engine going. But if it's like loose things, absolutely. Otherwise, I'll just float around in space,
which is fun. And it's generative. That's where a lot of the ideas percolate in that sort of exploration space.
Also, when I do nothing, I'm never bored. I always do something. But if I'm not making art and I do other stuff, that's always. Sometimes I feel like when the dust is settling, you learn the most. And then when you start a new painting, all of a sudden you're better at it. I don't know why.
Right.
It's not because of practice. It's just that you had time to overthink it, think it over. I mean, not overthink. That happens as well. But to think it over and then, all of a sudden you're better than you were before.
It's undervalued.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
Reflection,
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's why. Sorry, I was just going to say, I was talking to my son yesterday. He's a really good narrator because he does these videos. And I was talking to him about slowing down a little bit, because sometimes on mic he speaks quickly. And I feel like part of that, and the reason that I speak slower now than I did when I was younger, it's just you get confident, you get secure in what you're saying, and you don't feel you need to rush. And I feel like that's just reflection. That's life experience. You can reflect on that stuff, and it can kind of put everything into perspective. So when you do make something, it's not always about how many things you've done to make it better. It's also about the time you spent thinking about it or contextualizing it that can really help it move forward in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also sometimes you feel the urgency to, the urge to really put it out there.
Yeah.
And that can be good as well. But quality-wise, or to have time to or to think it over. I'm doing it again. I think that don't overthink it. I do that as well sometimes. But I think both things are interesting. Yeah.
I think it's a cycle of life too. It's like when you're younger, that energy is so important for discovery. And then as you get a little older, you can slow things down a little bit and kind of be a little pensive. And you know what I mean? It's just the cycle of life.
And also that you lose the excitement. I remember my twin brother, I didn't see him cry a lot when I was smaller. But there was one day that he was really crying, and I was like, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Because I'm growing up, and I'm realizing that I'm growing up." And I thought it was so nice, because then if you're really young, the world is a wonder, and it's like this whole thing that still needs to be explored, and you have this urgency to do that. But then at one point you realize things are not as they seem, or they are more normal than you had expected, or and
or you can just understand it in a way. Like, I get it,
Yeah, but that also, with part of that realization, you also lose a little bit of the excitement, because you know too much. I think that's also really interesting.
Definitely.
To sort of find your inner child. This sounds really, floaty. But to find that inner child, like the excitement of discovery.
Is that I feel like with art, we're just trying to get back to that stage of when it was like you were just discovering things, or just starting out, and the world was your oyster, and everything was exciting and new. And then you kind of learn the art world, or like you learn the process or things like that. And then you're constantly just trying to get that feeling back. Yeah.
Well, for sure. And I think, we've also as a species had an obsession with youth.
Yeah.
And that still is going on. I don't think that will ever go away, because we are all collectively afraid of death. Everything is so temporary. So you also try to regain that wonder that you had for a really short time.
Yeah.
And again, I think when people would be more open to other possibilities, the world would be so much nicer,
Definitely.
I think it all ties together. That whole thing of, listening and wondering and trying to take other people's views also in, and or where it comes from, and that curiosity. I think that's something that needs to be more important. But who am I? I think people are looking sometimes for youth only for the bright and shiny object,
right?
Instead of the curiosity. And I think the curiosity is the thing that keeps us all going. That also is, what you said about technology or medicines or science. It's so important to keep that alive, because it's, it helps us all in the end.
Yeah.
Or hopefully not the end.
Right. That's a sense of wonder. Like to lose that desire to dream would be real. That's, I think, where art dies. Not when people feel like, we don't need real art on walls anymore. I think it's when that sensibility, dissipates. Then that's the death of art in a way.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, art is so broad. It is also with music. I think that's a binding factor, and I think we all have to believe in that. That ties us in together, as a community.
Yeah.
And hopefully that, that will work out.
For sure.
I feel, if I'm being too vague, just say.
Not at all. I don't want to not say this too, because I was thinking at the beginning, that track, the Paths track that you have, did you ever see the movie Waking Life?
No.
It's like an animated, it's a Richard Linklater movie. It's like a rotoscoped animated, it's like sort of like about existentialism. But the music in that reminds me a little bit like the piano. And I was thinking of this, a lot of your work has this narrative that feels cinematic, and then the music has this feeling of like this cinematic wandering. I like that idea that you were saying that it's not really on the one, like the beat isn't necessarily always have to be there. It's a little more flowy and untied to that rhythmic, order. And there's something really sort of dreamy and cinematic about that, which I think encapsulates the music you're making and the narrative of the works that you're creating and the abstraction within the sort of representation of what you're doing, it all kind of floats in that. And then your YouTube playlist of like music was like right in sync with a lot of that vibe.
You found that as well.
I did research. I just didn't listen to that.
Good research. I'm a really visual thinker.
Yeah.
So everything in the way I see things, the way I remember things is visuals. I have a sort of photographic memory for image. I can't remember names, as I said before. It's
right.
like I have a really difficulty with names because to me that's really abstract. But I think really visual and I think filmic. I also used to teach in filmmaking. So also the narrative, the storytelling. And I really love film as well. Like the more obscure films. And one of my favorite last year was Mandy. Do you know that one?
Oh,
Nicolas Cage in it. Oh,
yeah, but I didn't see it.
Awesome. Yeah, so a lot of films that I like, I have the same sort of idea that it's organic. I love organic. Like in my drawing is organic. I love how it comes to be something completely new that doesn't exist according to a pattern. And the same goes with my painting, also up close. There's no specific pattern in it. It's just a play of colors that sort of creates the idea of a person, but it's quite abstract from up close. And and the narrative, it's all like a dream. And dreams are visual. So also how I write is also very. Maybe I'll send you later a bit of the text of the book. Could be nice. Yeah. But it's also very visual. And in the track parts, I describe the situation I'm in, and you can almost see it or be there. And I think I like that a lot. That idea of that you can sort of not so much transform, but be transported to a place through art or through film or music or text.
Right.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
that is possible.
Yeah.
I have the same with your work. When I look at it, it's sort of almost deprived of people.
Yeah, there's often about it's about the place sort of talking about who we are more than people talking about who we are. Yeah.
I really like that because it's almost an otherworldly view of humanity. And I really like that idea, sort of the absence. But because of the absence, it's really human. So
yeah. It's funny because speaking of like youth, I used to be really self-conscious of that because people would always say it's depopulated stuff and there's no people, and then it got in my head because I was younger and I just worried, oh, is that bad? And then I spent like 3 years painting portraits. I did like 333 portraits of people. And then I got that out of my system. And then I was like, okay, now I can go back to painting non-people.
But it's deprived of people, but it is people. It's so man-made also. It's really, I really like that.
Thanks.
So I think that's the power of art, that you create these worlds. And they're all different views.
Yeah.
And, that's why I like going to a museum and see all these different artists and artworks, because you're sort of transported to their place and their way of thinking. And it also opens up your own mind to other possibilities.
Definitely.
And, that's what I like also about, I think everything I make is within the same way of storytelling.
Right.
Well spotted.
It's amazing. It really builds like the more. I mean, I wish I could see a show of yours with the sound and then see the book all at the same time, like see all these things in real time, because it's so well like becomes this kind of like an all-encompassing sort of narrative or an experience that I guess I'll have to wait for your MoMA show or something when they have all these different rooms and we could see it all at the same time. That'll be great.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, just send them my contact.
Yeah, let's send them an email after this. Say,
yeah,
look,
exactly.
It's time.
Yeah, well, actually, I've been thinking about doing something like that, but it's in sort of development. Because, and I don't know how you experienced it, but in my time, like when I started, it was, you always had to choose a thing,
right.
that you're good at.
You do this.
Painting, or you do that. Otherwise, people would say like, no, people will get confused if you do different things. Right. They don't know how to put you in a box. Exactly. I don't want to be in a box.
Right.
And why not have different things coming, from the same box in different expressions, but the same world, like you're completely immersed in it. So I am working on something like that, but it needs some time to develop. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how when you were in school, they always want you to just narrow everything down. And then when you get out and you start doing these other things, people are like, oh, it's amazing. They work on in this way and they do music and it's almost like you're a Renaissance person, but they don't want to encourage that. But if you actually do it and it works, they're like, oh, this is amazing,
Yeah, and what you said, it's also so much easier nowadays to put out music or publish a book or a zine or... So there's so much more possible. I think that's the nice thing about this sort of DIY culture that, it's easier to make things, and it's no longer the official, hierarchy of companies that you have to go through. You can just be self-published, for instance.
I look at my son's bedroom and I'm like amazed. I was like, when I was growing up, if I had those microphones, those instruments, that computer that could record all that stuff, you know what I mean? Like it's a studio. Like we used to have to pay a lot of money to get like 2 days in a place like that just to record stuff. Now people can make albums in their, on their laptop in their bed. It's pretty cool.
It is really cool. Yeah. I would recommend it to anyone that knows or likes to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And it doesn't need to be expensive. You can do it in your bathtub with your phone.
Exactly. Exactly. That voice memo app is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just have to turn the high quality on and then it's ready to go.
Yeah. And don't splash too much with water. Don't get electrocuted.
Right. Yeah,
you'll have a really short career.
So for people who want to check out your stuff, obviously online, you post things on social media, you have a website, and then in real life, like when news comes up, you just post about it. So the best way for them to keep, updated on, when you're having shows.
For now, it's Instagram until something new comes up, a website that doesn't have all the commercial things and the bots and stuff. Right, I think Instagram is either coming to an end or they'll change it for good. I don't know how to say that, but so hopefully Instagram will get better, but I think it will get worse. So as soon as there's something better around, I'll be on that. But for now, it's Instagram, and also if you look online for the music, it's Ghost Mother, very mysterious. Not under my artist name. No, it's Ghost Mother and then / and stripe and then music. They can find it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking all this time to talk to me. It was great to...
it was really nice. A lot of philosophy.
To do it. Right?
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope people will enjoy it.
Yeah, well...
I haven't explained anything about my techniques, which is fine by me.
Well, you will say that for your new YouTube series of tutorials on using more red.
In the future, don't wait for it.
Right. That'll be your new TikTok platform. 10-second painting videos.
TikTok. Yeah. Here's my paint. Bye.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Vision is recorded, edited, and produced by myself, Brian Alfred. Please go to iTunes and leave a rating and review. If you want to find out more about the podcast, you can check it out on the website, soundandvisionpodcast.com, or on Instagram for some images at Sound and Vision Podcast. Make sure if you're out and about in Chelsea, you check out the group show I curated, Sound and Color. It's up for a little while longer. And some of you have asked about my teaching, and I allude to that in some of the podcasts. If you're a student and you're interested, check out Penn State University. They have a great program, lots of great visiting artists, faculty, and their MFA program is funded with assistantships and a lot of opportunities there. So check out the Penn State School of Visual Arts if you're interested in that. Many thanks to Brigitte for the intro-outro music, Michael Lovett for the introduction, and Martine for taking the time to talk to me from the Netherlands.